Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order this October 17th, 2024 Finance and Facilities Committee meeting of the School District of Haverford Township. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have several items on tonight's agenda that have outside guests. Thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over to Mr. Testa, our assistant manager, to walk us through the agenda.
Thank you. So on the first item for this evening, we have a virtual and in-house student presentation on solar feasibility, which was presented by Victor Donnay and his team at Bryn Mawr College. So I will turn that over to you.
Great. Can we start? Okay, super. I'll just do a quick word of introduction and then pass it off to my students. Hello, thank you, members of the board, for having us talk with you today. I'm Victor Donnay from the Math Department at Bryn Mawr College and a resident of Haverford Township. I've spoken with you a bit over the summer about solar on the schools. I raised all the benefits that could come educationally for students in the district to have access to the information from solar panels. Today, my two students will talk about the environmental and financial aspects of such a project. With you in person is Chris Pazia, and joining you from Spain, where she's on a study abroad semester, is Preeta Peterson.
Hello, yeah, thanks. My name's Preeta. I'm in Spain right now. I'm a junior at Bryn Mawr College, and we're here to present to you our project on the feasibility of putting solar panels on Coopertown and Linwood Elementary Schools. So first we want to acknowledge that this project is an outgrowth of our course in math modeling and sustainability taught by Professor Donnay at Bryn Mawr College, and this was made possible thanks to the Bryn Mawr Praxis program, which gave us the opportunity for experiential and community-based learning.
Which we use to look at the school's annual energy use. We also want to thank Liz Robinson, who is the executive director of the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association, which is a nonprofit that focuses on incorporating green energy, specifically solar, here in Philadelphia. And we also worked with an energy engineer, Mike Connolly, who gave us a lot of insight into the solar system design process and allowed us to design solars using a really cool software that I will talk about later.
So our main goals were to present a cost-benefit analysis of putting solar panels on the Coopertown and Linwood Elementary Schools, and also to provide insight on the financial and environmental benefits of solar installation.
So first, I'm going to give you guys the overall agenda and overview of this talk. So we're going to go over the school's annual energy usage and determine how much electricity we would need for these solar panels to cover that use. Then we're going to go into actually designing these solar panels using two softwares, Solar Edge and PV Watts, which I will discuss later. Then we'll look at the environmental benefits, and we want to stress that there are more than the financial analysis that we're presenting today. We're also going to go over two cases where we have the district looking at a bond case or using the capital fund in order to fund these projects. And we'll go over those assumptions in the later sections.
So first we're going to show you our analysis of the school's energy use. So we analyzed the school's energy use based off the PICO bills that were given to us by FD Testa. And so our main goal was to offset the PICO electric energy use with solar as much as we could. And we used the PICO bills up to around September 2023 when we did the calculations. So here you can see the kilowatt hours per year that each school uses and used in the year up to around September 2023. So for Coopertown, they used around 424,000 kilowatt hours. hours per year, and then Linwood a bit higher at 573,000 kilowatts hours per year. And then to offset this energy usage, we proposed 2 projects for each school, so 2 options. For Coopertown, we have a 100% solar project, which uses the most efficient roofs of the school to offset 100% of their energy usage. And then the second is maximal solar generation, which maximizes all the roof space on the school and offsets around 244% of their usage, and allows for virtual net metering, which we can talk about in the next slide. And then for Linwood, there are 2 proposed projects are the rooftop arrays, which basically just maximize the rooftop space at Linwood and offset 55% of their energy usage. And then our second option is we add foot canopies over the parking lot area, and this will allow us to offset 107% of their energy usage.
So of course the question is, why would we want to generate over twice as much energy at Coopertown if we originally just want to offset it? And that's because of virtual net metering. So this allows us to offset energy usage for other buildings in the district that are less than 2 miles away. As Prita mentioned, one of the options for Linwood would be to have a project that would only cover 55%. But if we were to use virtual net metering at Coopertown, we could offset this energy usage. In addition to Linwood, we can also offset the energy use at Chestnutwood Elementary and here at the Oakmont Administrative Building as well. And so now I'll talk about Solar Edge. This is something that we worked with Mark Connolly on, our energy engineer. And basically Solar Edge is a software that allows us to design solar systems on the roofs, and we can adjust for the different aspects of each building, including like the tilt of the roof and also the size of the roof. So our overall goal is to determine the system size and how much power each system can generate and the power they can produce. So first I'm going to go over the Coopertown Elementary designs in Solar Edge. So first we have the 100% solar generation project. In this picture it's hard to tell, but we picked the most optimal roofs, meaning that they can generate the most power for their size. So these are typically south-facing roofs and the bigger systems. And here is the maximal solar generation, where we would offset 244% offset, and we cover all the roofs, and this would allow for the virtual net metering that I had mentioned earlier.
And then for Linwood, you can see there's 5 proposed roof systems, and all the school's roofs are flat, so each array would be designed as like a tilted ballasted racking system. And then if you add the canopies over the parking lot, you can offset 100% of their usage, and you can see the canopies, 3 of them will be like east facing, and then 1 will be south facing, which is the most efficient. And then, so our next step was we took all this data we got from Solar Edge about the roof size, the tilt, the azimuth, which is which way the roofs are tilting, and location. And we plugged this into the PV Watts calculator, which is from the NREL, which is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. And this calculates the annual and monthly energy production of a solar system using weather data from the National Solar Radiation Database and some other data sources. So here we can see an example for the Coopertown 100% system. You see in the bottom corner the roof system, each labeled, and in the table, each row corresponds to one of the roofs. And so the kilowatt DC is the size of each system, which we got from Solar Edge. And then the kilowatt hours per year is how much energy each roof can generate per year. And then the kilowatt hours per year per kilowatt basically tells us the efficiency of each roof. And you can see the efficiency is over 1,000 for everything, over like 1,200, 1,300. And this is very good, which makes sense because all these roofs are south-facing. There's no trees blocking the roofs or buildings. It's a great location. And we can focus in on this number right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but 432,000. That's just the total. That's just the total energy production of this entire system. And then here you can see a chart of the monthly energy use versus proposed generation of this system. So you can see in each month we have blue is the energy usage of the school, and then red is our proposed solar or like estimated solar generation. So you can see like in the winter, the solar generation goes down, but the usage goes up, versus in the summer, generation goes up, usage goes down. But over a year, evens out to around 100% offset. And then here we have a table of all the other projects we proposed. So basically the same data, all in one table of the size of each system for each project, and then the energy generated per year. So, and like all of these systems are very efficient, and they're all excellent sites for solar panels. And most of the roofs will be like south facing or east facing, and none of them are like blocked by any trees or buildings, which is great. Yeah, here you can see more images of each system. Canopies down on the right, and then you can see both Coopertown systems.
And of course, while we do want to consider the financial feasibility of this project, we also want to consider the environmental benefits. So using green energy and avoiding fossil fuels and excess greenhouse gas emissions is something that we'd really like to focus on in this project. Okay, so for the environmental benefits, here we have a table with each of the projects listed in the leftmost column, and we can see that we're analyzing two things. One, the total CO2 emissions avoided over 30 years. So this is the energy that we are replacing that would have been generated by a greenhouse gas power plant. And so each kilowatt hour generated contributes to about 1.5 pounds of CO2. And so we see that, also metric tons is a unit that is about 2,000 pounds of CO2. So in these projects, we can save about 6,000 to almost 20,000 metric tons of CO2. And secondly, we want to talk about the social cost of carbon. And so the social cost of carbon represents damages to society that are related to fossil fuel use. For example, the recent hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, they're really severe. So that is also a result of global warming and the ocean heating up. In addition, we can also see like sea level rise or damage to agricultural yield. That would also be an example of something that would contribute to the social costs. That isn't something directly, that isn't as direct that you wouldn't normally see. And so currently that is priced at about $51 per ton, but there is a proposed raise to $190 per metric ton of CO2. And so we can see the various savings in the chart. They range from about $300,000 to over $1 million that can be contributed to the social cost of carbon.
Next, we're going to show our financial analysis, our 30-year financial analysis of each of our proposed solar projects. So we used the Solar Schools Toolkit from PSEA, which is the Philadelphia Solar Energy Association. And we were provided a performer that we used by Liz Robinson, which was a 30-year direct ownership scenario.
And so first we'll present the bond case. We made various assumptions in our analysis, but we also started with 4 cases: the optimistic, the middle, the conservative, and the mixed, because we weren't sure what values these different assumptions would have. So for example, the panel costs measured in dollars per watt DC. We want a lower cost to the panels. That would be better for the school district to buy. In addition, the bond financing rate, the interest that the school would have to pay on the bond. For the most optimistic case, we want this to be lower. We want the school to pay less in interest. And addition, we also have the SRECs, the solar renewable energy credits. And this is money that the government can give back for each megawatt hour of solar energy that is generated. Currently, they are priced at about $35 per megawatt hour. So we give a range of these assumptions. We also have the O&M costs, the operations and maintenance. So this is just maintenance for your solar panels, and specifically the inverter replacement. And the inverter is a part in the solar panel that allows us to convert electricity into something that we can actually use. Addition, we have the cost of electricity escalation. So we have values that range from 0 to 2%. If the escalation rate continues to increase, that would be better for the school to invest in solar panels because they're avoiding this escalation. In fact, PECO has a proposed rate of about 12% in 2025. So if that were true, then it would be very, those are really high numbers in comparison to 2% in the most optimistic case. And finally, we have the peak demand reduction. So the peak demand reduction comes from the distribution charge. And the distribution charge is something on the bill that relates to the peak usage during a 15-minute interval in the month, for example. And so if this peak usage were to occur when the solar panels were generating energy, then we would see an increased reduction in this distribution charge. But this is very hard to predict because what if the most intense use comes during a time where it's cloudy and the solar panels aren't generating as much energy?
I also want to add on that, like, when we were looking at the school's PECO bills, this peak demand charge was like almost half the bill. So this would be a huge thing to reduce this charge. And then we have a few other important assumptions that didn't change based on the cases, like optimistic, conservative. So first we have the IRA rebate, which comes in around the second year, which is thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, which provides cash rebates for nonprofit organizations undertaking solar energy projects. And the standard rebate is 30% of the cost of the project, that is reduced to the amount of the project in proportion to the amount of the project that is financed by tax-exempt bonds. So we assume that this project we financed 100% by tax-exempt financing. So this rebate goes down to 25.5%. And then we also assumed a $75,000 cash down payment, which would reduce the loan amount. And then we assumed a 30-year period for the project and a 20-year bond. We assumed a 30-year period because the solar panels should work for around 30 years, if not more. So there may be additional savings after 30 years that we didn't take into account if these solar panels keep on working after 30 years.
Yes, so now we're going to go into the individual cases. I'll start with Coopertown and then 100% project. And I'll go over all the different rows and each thing we're looking at for each of the 4 cases represented as columns. So if we look at the cost of the system, this comes from the watt DC, $1 per watt DC charge. We can see that for the most optimistic case, the panels would be the cheapest, and then for the conservative case, they would go up to almost $1 million. But we also have this IRA discount, as Prita mentioned, which takes off from that total cost of the system, giving us the net cost at the bottom, which ranges from $600,000 in the most optimistic case to $730,000 in the most conservative case. And so once we have these costs and expenses, we can look at the savings. So we'll see that in all the cases but the conservative case, we see that the district makes money over 30 years, and this amount can range up to $600,000 in the most optimistic case. We also see the net present value varies between a negative net present value for the most conservative case up to a $200,000 net present value in the most optimistic case. And we see the capital recovery period, which is whenever the total cumulative savings surpasses the total expenses of the project. And we can see that it ranges from 8 to not recovered in the 30-year lifetime, as in the conservative case. And here we have the maximum solar project, which again covers 244% of Coopertown's needs. And we see that this cost of the system is significantly more expensive because it is over twice the size. So we see it's over $2 million. And then the IRA discount ranges from about $500,000. And the net cost ranges again in the $1.5 million to $1.8 million. And again, if we look at the total savings over 30 years, we'll see that all the options but the conservative, again, generate the district money. This value can range from $100,000 to over $1 million for the most optimistic case. And we see the net present value, the same pattern as in the 100% project, where we have a net present value, a different pattern, that the net present value is negative in 3 of the cases except for the optimistic case. And the capital recovery period is slightly longer because of the higher cost of the panel system, but all the options are paid off within the 30-year lifetime, except for the most conservative case.
And then for Winwood, with just the roof arrays, which offset 55% of the school's needs, we can see if we look at the total savings over 30 years, we can see that in all the cases except conservative, the school saves money over 30 years. And then looking at the capital recovery period, we have a range of like low as 7 years, and then in the conservative case, this system would not pay back at all in 30 years. And then for the Winwood, when we add the canopies to the school, the only assumption that changes is the roof panel cost, because canopies are a bit more expensive. So here on the left, you can see our original roof panel cost, and then we have the assumed canopy cost. So for each case, there's a canopy cost we assumed. And then on the far right, that is our like weighted average of these two costs. So these are the values that we used in our analysis. And then here you can see that the overall cost of the system is around $1,500,000 to like almost $2 million. But then in the savings, we see that only the optimistic case produces savings over 30 years, and yes, only the optimistic case, in only this case in the school, basically pay off the system. And even so, that is at year 21, which is after the loan ends. And so overall, the options that produce district savings over 30 years for Coopertown is all the cases except for conservative for both projects. And then for Winwood, just the roof arrays, also every case produces savings except for the conservative case. And then when we add the canopies, it only becomes only the optimistic case that will produce savings for the district in 30 years.
And so while we had originally assumed that the district was going to pay for these panel systems with a bond, we recently learned that they were actually interested in paying for the system with the capital fund. So I'll go over some of the assumptions that we made in our new calculations. So we assumed that the source would be from the school district tax revenue, meaning that the district would not take out a loan. In addition, this would be a 30% IRA rebate because we're not using the tax-exempt financing. And we would have this upfront, essentially cash payment of the total system cost without the loan. But we're going to maintain the same assumptions for each of the four cases: the optimistic, the middle, the conservative, and the mixed case. So again, if we look at the Coopertown 100% project, we have the same four cases, and we have the same rows, the cost of the system, which didn't change because we're making the same assumptions. The IRA discount went up because we're increasing it by the 4.5%. So this makes the net cost go down. We also see that there are savings for all of the cases instead of in the previous case with the bond, where all the cases but the conservative case generate the district savings. But we also see this net present value be negative for the middle and the conservative case. But we also do see that the solar project is able to pay itself off within the 30 years. All of them are able to pay within 30 years, but they're going to take a little longer because we're having this larger upfront payment at the very beginning. And again, for the maximal solar project, we're seeing the same trends as we did for the 100% project, with bigger numbers because the system is over twice as large as the 100% project. So we're seeing the cost still at over $2 million, a bigger IRA discount, so the net cost is a little smaller. We also see that there are more savings, and all of them are profit. All of the options are making the district money over the 30 years. But we also see the net present value is only positive in the optimistic case. And we also see that the capital recovery period for all four of the options is achieved within the 30-year lifetime, which is different than the bond case where that was not true. It's just going to take a little bit longer because of the upfront payment.
And then, so for Donnay, just like Coopertown, we see IRA discount is a bit higher, so net cost goes down. And if we look at this, the savings and the capital recovery period, we see that for every single case, the district is saving money over 30 years, and we're paying off this project in 21 years or less. And then for the roof and canopy arrays, we see this is also a lot better than when they're using a bond. The district is saving money in every case except for conservative, and they're also paying off the project in under 19 years for every case except for conservative. And so how does this compare to the bond case? So first of all, there's no loan, and so there's no loan to be paying every year for 20 years. And then, although this does mean that there is a larger upfront payment, there's also increased total annual savings for the district and for taxpayers. And overall, every single case is cost efficient except for literally just one case, which is the Linwood Roof and Canopy project, just the conservative case. So this is actually looking a lot better than using a bond, if it's possible to use the capital fund. And thank you so much for listening. Does anyone have questions?
I have a question. First of all, Prita, thanks for dialing in at, I guess it's midnight in Spain or past midnight. Yeah, thank you. Could you explain the concept of net present value? Not being a financial person, I always find it confusing compared to you're paying for the system, but the net present value is still negative. So I struggle with that.
Maybe we can go back to one of the slides that had the different.
Right.
There was total savings was a number, and then net present value was a number.
What is the concept of net present value?
Prita, do you want to go ahead, or I can answer it as well?
Yeah, it's directed at anybody that.
Are you able to answer? I can also.
Yeah. Okay, so the concept net present value is we're taking the first principle is that money today is worth more than money tomorrow because we're able to invest the money today and earn interest on it. So, in this case, like the net present value represents like the future amount of money that you're making discounted to today's value because money today is worth more, essentially. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
And I had go ahead.
We use 5%.
Just for the students' benefit, this is our consultant from Public Financial Management, PFM. So he
I'll leave my LinkedIn.
Second question I had with the conservative case, could you go back to the assumptions? I want to understand the different cases a little bit better. Because that's where the risk is, right? Okay, so what's the main difference in the conservative case? Is you don't get as much on the peak demand reduction, electricity stays cheap, costs more to install, okay, financing is high.
That's what's lower.
Okay. Right, okay. Okay, that's all, thank you.
I guess I had a question as well, kind of along different lines. For the bond financing scenario, the IRA rebates 25.5% because it kicks in on the second year.
Yes.
So it only funds for their. So you're losing so you're losing some percentage there, but as opposed to getting the entire thing initially after it's installed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and this just takes into account the IRA, does not take into account Solar for Schools grants, which are also out there as well.
Yeah. And then the SRECs too are only for the first 20 years, so that's another assumption that we also made as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get the presentation, by the way? I don't think we have presentation in our,
Like a copy of it? Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
And we can also make the final, I mean, this is a shorter presentation, so we have the final report as well that we can send out after the meeting as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Right, I think we have a copy of the report, but not the slide deck.
Yeah.
One of the things I thought was interesting and maybe not intuitive was that the canopy array over a parking lot would be more expensive than the ones on the roof. I guess I just kind of imagined that they were just there and accessible, and so maybe I didn't understand that there would be a cost difference with that.
Got to put a structure on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one question for maybe Mr. Testa is, when we look at the roofs, when we look at the roofs, I know there is mechanical equipment and our maintenance crew would need to have access. Are you able to get a sense of like whether the tool that modeled our roofs showed the right spaces where arrays could be placed and not interfere with whatever ventilation or other systems we have up there?
Right, that's something we would look into with our facilities director, just to see, is there any issue with accessing the roofs? If there was a leak or something that would prevent us from maintaining that space that was proposed.
Yeah, and I know Solar Edge on like the design feature, you can put in like obstruction where you can't have solar panels as well, and that would add like a 3 feet barrier in addition to that like if it has like a square in the middle where you can't have the solar panel installed there.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion about battery backup?
No.
Okay, and just in case that wasn't picked up for people watching remotely, the question was, did the system include a battery backup?
Or the store the
Mhm.
Right, so there's generating energy and then storing it for the ability to have it saved in case the power goes out, and then we could.
There's batteries to that.
Mhm.
My question also, you mentioned, you had a bar chart up here a little while ago, showing the energy usage by month, I guess. I guess my question for that is right there. During the summer, when school's not in session, does that take that into account, the fact that the buildings aren't occupied?
Like the energy usage you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we just what we did was we had the recent like 12 months of the bill, and then we inputted those numbers into the bar
And
graph.
so you use the actual bills from the
Yes.
school? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure of that, so it's not, okay.
Yeah.
I had a follow-up question on, so Coopertown seems, better for solar, and I guess it's because there's more surface area on the roof.
Yeah.
And you made the comment that there's no obstruction. I know in residential systems, sometimes like one panel gets blocked and that you have to think about the design. But that's not the case for both Linwood and Coopertown. There's no.
I think for Coopertown, so we use like, in our simulation, we use like flush mount, so they'd be like flush to the roof. And I think Prita mentioned that they were using a ballasted racking system because it's a flat roof. So
Okay.
I think Solar Edge might take that into account, but I think Prita might have more on the ballasted racking array.
But I guess my question is, you determined there were no obstructions other than putting the panels on, however there's no trees or anything.
Yeah, what we had done is we had like gone to these sites and we had like looked around and see if there was anything blocking it.
Okay.
And when we went to like Coopertown, for example, we saw on the Google Maps there was a tree, but then we went and the tree didn't seem to be blocking it as much as the Google Maps picture had shown.
Okay.
So those are the assumptions we made.
Great.
See a question in the audience?
Like for the design. I'm not sure exactly. I'm sorry if Professor Donnay or pretty to remember.
And just again, for benefit of those listening, the question is, was it an individual box or a string that could affect the pricing of what was assumed in these cases? And I think that's just indicative of one of the things that's been challenging for the district and the board to contemplate these kinds of projects, because there's, as you laid out, lots of different variables that go into their cost, the design, the different incentives and assumptions that we're making. So it's really helpful to have your analysis to lay out those different variables, and I liked how you presented a range of optimistic to conservative to help us understand what, when you make some changes in those different variables, what impact that has on the analysis.
To follow up on that, I think there was a question about warranties on solar panels that has come up and been maybe, a concern, but what is your thinking? You made the statement that they would last 30 years, although they're only warranted for 25, 30, or 20, 30. But what is the standard panel lifespan in use that versus the warranty?
I'm actually not too sure on that. I think we just assumed a 30-year lifetime because that was an assumption that was made by the Solar Tools Toolkit. I'm not too sure. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay.
And they do usually 80 to 85% even production warranty.
Okay. So, I'll just repeat the answer. From the audience, Joy Baxter said that the standard solar panel array is warranty for 25 years, and they typically produce 80%. Is that right? At that point. Okay. So they're not dead. They're okay.
Thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
presentation and information, and for joining us from Spain.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Next on our agenda, we have Kate Stanley, who is a representative from Provident Energy, the district's energy consultant. She's here to discuss renewable energy purchases, just giving us a little bit more of a background on what that means. Initially, we had John Young, who was also a representative of the organization, come out and speak to the committee about renewable energy purchasing recs, and so I will turn it over to Kate. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm Kate Stanley, Director of Operations at Constellation, or not, that was my former company at Provident. I know John Young has been here talking about solar in the past, and also about RECs more recently. So I just wanted to come so that if you have any follow-up questions, we can talk about it. I thought I'd lead off because I think this has kind of been one of the main questions is, can you do solar and also purchase the RECs? And does one of those impact the other? The answer to that, the short answer is no, you can do both. You can purchase the RECs through your electric supply agreement, and that doesn't impact your ability to go forward with a solar project. I know in the previous presentation, I don't want to just call you out, but we talked about SRECs, and one of the things that makes these financially feasible is the ability to sell the SREC on the market and get paid for that. So a Pennsylvania SREC right now on the market is about $40 a megawatt hour versus a national REC, which was what you would get through a supply contract, which is closer to like $3 a megawatt hour right now. So it makes sense if you are having solar here that you would sell that back and be able to recoup some of the cost through that. But then if you want to be able to claim that your electricity is from a renewable source, if you sell the SREC, you cannot make that claim anymore because somebody else is going to buy that and they're going to make that claim. So if you still then want to be able to make the claim, you need to then purchase RECs somewhere else, and then you can buy less expensive RECs, like a national wind REC, that would be like more cost effective. And you can do that for different terms, so you don't have to do it for the length of the supply contract. You can do it for 1 year. You can do it for the full length. You can do it as, I would recommend doing it where you marry it up with the load. So that means for every megawatt hour of energy you use, it's matched with one rec. So it's a 1-to-1, but you can also purchase them in blocks if that's another way you want to do it. And you could do it for a year, and then when that's up, you could do it for another year. When you look at the pricing of recs right now, they are less expensive in the short term, and then just because there's more unknowns with what the regulations will be and what the demand will be in the outer years, the cost of it goes up. So it makes more sense rather than to aggregate that cost for 3 years, buying it all at once, if you want to just like buy it for 1 year, and it would be the less expensive option. So that's sort of what I wanted to lay out to start. I'm sure you have many questions, but hopefully that sets up a bit of a framework.
Yeah, I guess just to follow up on that, I mean, if you have a solar array, you're obviously generating your own power, so you wouldn't have to buy it.
Right, yes, yeah, so you are having savings and in these scenarios that were laid out, there could be significant offsets, so you wouldn't need to buy supply.
Right, but for that you did buy, you could purchase the renewable credits.
Exactly, yep.
Right, to supplement, okay.
Right.
And so the proposal that we have to buy, it would be wind energy generated for the districts, all of the energy use across all of our school buildings,
Yep.
and administration, everything.
Mm-hmm.
The RECs purchased is 6,000 some in the contract that we see here, and you're saying that's 6,000 times $3 or so? Like, could you just
Yeah, sure.
walk through
So
the
I
whole
think
process?
the initial proposal that I sent over was if you wanted to buy RECs for the remainder of your current electricity agreement. So this was based on if it started November 1st and went through June 2025. So that's the rest of your current electricity supply agreement that's with WGL. So the RECs, the approximate number of megawatt hours left in the contract, the usage is about 6,084. So it's matched like the cost of a REC times 1 megawatt hour. So the cost of a REC, if you say, I think this was at $3.30 times the 6,084. So it was 20,000 and change to do the remainder of this agreement. If you were going to then do another one for the first year of the next supply agreement that's coming up. So if you wanted to do July 2025 through June 2026, the annual usage is a little over 9,000 megawatt hours a year. So it would be, I think, closer to $30,000.
And the benefits of that would be, we would be commanding in the marketplace 100% renewable energy, in this case, wind generated energy. So not greenhouse gas emitting, and the REC means that we uniquely are claiming that portion of the supply.
Yes, yeah. So the benefits of purchasing REC, what it's doing is you're helping support the market for renewable generation. So by purchasing it, you're creating demand for it, which the more demand there is, the more people will build renewables. So that's kind of the if you're trying to like that's what you can say, is that you are using renewable energy. By having the REC, you have that attribute associated with the REC. So if you do 100%, you can say you're using 100% renewable energy, and then you're also supporting the renewable energy market and the additionality, encouraging additionality. You are not creating additionality. And there was a question, and I wanted to make sure to clarify this. You can't claim a carbon offset with a REC, because an offset, like putting solar on, is an offset. An offset implies that you are somehow reducing the emissions that are going out, but with a REC, you're still buying the same fuel mix that everybody has around here. So you're not actually reducing the amount of emissions, but you can claim to be using renewable energy, if
So
that
if
makes
you have,
sense.
so you have solar panels, you're actually creating renewable energy. If you're purchasing RECs, you're only encouraging others to do
Right.
it.
Yeah,
But yeah, if we put solar on a building, the model had us selling recs.
right,
We don't
yeah,
have to-
so,
but we don't have to sell RECs, though, I think. I mean, it's possible to sell some RECs and keep others. I mean, if we're talking about making sure it's financially sound, it's possible to like sell half of them. and then
yeah,
sell half of them.
I think you can do that, yeah.
There's a way of like kind of parsing that based on the market, based on other factors.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm not sure how much of the financial analysis depends on recouping the costs of.
Yeah, that's one question I was gonna ask about. I guess in the report, kind of wanted to see what the total cost of the RECs would be. We can calculate that out, I'm sure. But, okay.
I had a question about the contract. So we're purchasing a block of 6,084. And so if we work to become more efficient and we, in the November to June time period, we don't use that much. I mean, just a question of how does that work?
Yeah, so
Are we
it's.
committed to buying those blocks?
It is interesting. I will point that out that WGL, who your current supplier is, does do it differently. They don't offer the adder the way that many other suppliers do. So that is a point that if your usage changed dramatically, you might have paid for more RECs than megawatt hours that you actually used in this arrangement.
Because they expire at that end of June.
It's
We're
just
paying
kind
up
of like,
front.
you're just deciding up front that you're gonna buy these RECs and that you're committed to doing your best to purchase RECs that match your anticipated usage. So WGL like looks at, they have your usage because they bill you, so they gave us this number of this is what we see based on historical usage is what the expected megawatt hours for that period will be. Some suppliers.
Fair to say, like, if we bought 6,000, but we only used 4,000 in a time period, that 2,000 differential does not carry over into the next period, and there's no refund for that 2,000. It's
Right.
what we initially thought.
Yeah, yeah. Some suppliers do it. I know Constellation for one, because as I mentioned, I used to work there, and I actually did a lot with RECs there. So the way their contract can work, you can do it as an adder, so they will like bill it based on your usage.
Okay.
So,
Maybe it's something to consider the next time we look at providers. Flexibility in terms of,
these are, yeah, it's really however you want to do it. Usually it's probably pretty accurate, and at the end of the day, like, you're buying
right?
green, so.
And we could evaluate in June, if we want to renew it, we could look at, did we
well
buy
we
too
sized it,
much?
yeah.
Right?
In this case, this would really be driven because we're part of the purchasing consortium for
Yeah.
our electricity,
Right.
so.
So this is timely.
Right, this is timing. Like, we lock in for multi-year periods when we buy our electricity. We go through the IU and Provident Energy to make that
Yeah.
purchasing decision.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing that right now. So if this is something that you are considering, I can make sure that when we're vetting the suppliers and we're getting the pricing back right now, I can inquire about how they do it, if it's block or not, and get some of their rates. It's relatively stable in the market. There isn't a lot of volatility in the cost of RECs, and I've gotten quotes from a few different suppliers, and they're all really right around that $3 a megawatt hour range right now. So that's not something I think you would see much different between suppliers, just sometimes the way that they invoice it, or if it's like a block versus a load following product, that is the only difference. But
So, Mr. Testa, you weren't saying, would we be committing to multi-year investment in this or no?
So when we do our energy purchasing, that we do multi-year. So it would be 2 or 3 years, depending on the analysis that Provident does. We usually lock in as a group, as an IU, on the provider that we're going to go with. And obviously based on lowest cost, but usually it's locked in for a time period, multi-year.
For a certain amount of megawatt?
Yes.
Okay.
But that is separate from this kind of rec purchase. We can do that on
Yeah,
our own as a district, not as part of the consortium.
Right.
Oh, okay.
right.
Yeah, this would be an add-on.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
So
Okay.
we do it as like the whole aggregation for everyone. You use like your purchasing power of being part of that, choose the supplier, the rate and the term, and everybody gets that. And then once that's done, then anybody who is interested in buying recs, then we do like a separate kind of addendum to the contract with the supplier for those who want it. And you can decide if you want to do 100%, 50%, like any percent that you want. And like I said, the term, like you wouldn't be able to go past the term of the contract. If it was a 2-year contract, you wouldn't be able to do 3, but if it's a 2-year contract, you could do just 1 year if you wanted.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
So next on our agenda, we have Ken Matthews with CB Development and Jeff Straub from Crabtree Rohrbaugh, who are going to go over Chatham Park updates, any change orders, and then a presentation for Coopertown.
Good evening, everyone. So just wanted to give a real quick update on Chatham. So things are moving along very well. Most of the foundations are in. It's hard to believe, but we'll be seeing steel here before Thanksgiving. And the back classroom wing will start going up as well. So contractors have been great. Everything is just moving along well. I should always knock on wood for that, but the project's in good shape and we're on schedule. That being said, there has been a number of changes. So we sent over a list of them to you. There's quite a bit for tester construction. There was a lot of change orders associated with the site plans. They changed after, there was a number of changes made after going through Delaware County Conservation, as well as the Township engineer. So they're all listed here before you. They do add up, and there is a change for the middle school as well. Same thing, after the site plans were reviewed by the Township, there were some changes that were made that were cause for ads. So that was tester construction. So they have a total of $182,000 of changes that are being presented. Borough Electrical has $9,000. We had to change some of the electrical equipment because the lead times were.
And I'm just going to interrupt.
Oh.
We don't have the attachment that you're referencing, so.
Oh. Okay.
Appreciate if you could maybe just walk.
Sure.
through it a little.
No.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it has been here, but it's not here for our reference at the moment.
No problem. We'll make sure we get that sent over. So, so for some additional site work, there's a little over $45,000 that was added at Chatham. Again, it was E&S, erosion and sedimentation controls, additional manhole, some inlet work, additional parking spot on Alston Road. So that came out to a $45,710 change.
Can I ask a question on that? Was that the water runoff problem in the back?
No, that was a
Okay.
completely separate project.
Separate
that was
project,
the
okay.
district did directly.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that
thank
was
you.
not part of this project. We had a little bit of additional ceiling demolition that was needed for $905. So then the big one that we wanted to discuss here this evening is $66,000 change, which was an add alternate originally, if you remember, to upgrade the roof, the high roof at Chatham to a 30-year roof warranty. So, after going through it with the district's consultant, the roof consultant, regardless of whether solar is put on the building or not, for the longevity of the building, it really makes sense to upgrade the roof. Linwood has a 30-year roof, Coopertown has a 30-year roof. So the cost of it is very fair and reasonable, and really recommended because they're very confident you'll get a 40-plus year roof out of that. So it's really worth doing. And this is for the upper roofs only. We will potentially be coming back to you later. As we see how the project progresses for the lower first floor, one-story roof, to do and add and upgrade that roof as well. It's a little bit more involved, but we'll see how the project goes. And once we get to a point where we're comfortable with contingency, we can present that to you probably closer to the end of the year, because that roof doesn't need to be done until March, April timeframe. Any questions about the roof warranty or the roof upgrade?
And so in addition to like a warranty, a contractual backing of the company, like is there actual enhancements to the
Yes.
roof that they install?
So the roof the thickness itself gets increased.
Okay.
Goes from a 60 millimeter to a 90 millimeter thickness roof membrane. So that's that extra durability and, it's rated for 90 mile an hour wind. So you go from a 72 mile an hour warranty up to a 90 mile an hour wind warranty. So that's the other advantage.
Thank you.
And will that change order then be on the next agenda for the regular meeting? Yes.
Yes, all of these change orders are on for next week's agenda.
So want to clarify, thank you.
So we had some additional demolition that needed to be done in the stairwell in the rear of the building. That was a little over 21,000. The middle school site work change orders were just over $11,000. There was an existing water line in the back of the building that had been repaired about 3 or 4 years ago. It was in the way of the new addition. It was kind of an unknown exactly where it was. That had to be completely redone for a little over $23,000. And then we had a change where we have to add a ceiling back into the 1990s wing for $7,800. And there was some additional concrete foundation work due to existing conditions that were uncovered in the front of the building for $7,465. So those all totaled $180 to tester construction. Then we had Borough Electric had a little over $9,000 change for electrical equipment.
Ken, could you, before you move on, and we do have the attachment now.
Oh, you do?
We're
Okay.
following along.
Great.
Could you just put the $182,000 into perspective in terms of what our contingency was and
Sure.
what remains?
The contingency for the project was $1.5 million. So now with all these change orders submitted to date and any other holds we have against the project, contingency balance is now down to $1,211,000. So we're almost out of the ground. We haven't hit any rock, any issues like that. As we always talk about, coming out of the ground is the biggest risk of the project. We have a little bit of work to do in the back of the building, but then we'll pretty much be done with major site work out of the ground and concerns there, or potential risks and costs for that. So we feel like the contingency's, in good order at this time.
Yeah, thank you. It just helps to put that in perspective. And a
100%.
lot of these things were related to conditions that were uncovered once some of the demolition began and
Mostly unforeseen conditions and governmental changes that were after the bids.
okay, thanks.
So again, we just have the one small change for the electrical contract. The equipment specified was almost a year out, and which is too long. And then if you recall that we hired a early summer package general contractor to do the temporary classrooms and some of that work. So there was kind of a few items that were added, again, unforeseen conditions, dealing with that, some deduct credits back. So at the end of the day, it's a deduct of their contract of $12,000. So it kind of netted out things they didn't have to do, found some unforeseen conditions they needed to take care of. So again, at the end of the day, it netted a credit of almost $13,000.
And then that completes their.
So their scope's done. Yes, the four prime contractors are the rest of the scope for the project. So, and that being said, there's a good amount of allowance money in the project of a little over $315,000. And spent of that to date is just a little over $6,000. But that's money that's built into their contracts that can only be used with our approval. Any other questions?
Thank you. Glad to hear things are off to a good start.
Off to a good start.
And the middle school is going to be able to get started?
I'm sorry, yeah, the middle school has started, they're starting to dig out actually tomorrow. So it started a little behind because some of the approvals took a few weeks longer than anticipated from the township, but we should be in good shape. There's no issues that we see at this time.
And despite how chilly it's been these last couple of mornings, there's still a lot of good construction weather ahead of us.
The weather's been, I feel like it hasn't rained in 3 months. I mean, the grass is dead. So for them, I think they lost 1 day with that when it rained, but that's it. So they've really been moving along well.
How's the construction with the, keeping classrooms? There were some temporary classrooms put in the former
Yeah,
auditorium.
the teachers have seemed to embrace it from everything I can tell, speaking. Yeah, and they're all very nicely decorated. So it seems like everything's going well with that.
Good.
Jeff?
Thanks, Ken. And are we going to pull up the presentation? Oh, can I? Sorry. Okay, we've started with Coopertown for the overall design. This evening it's just sort of a broad brush as we get up and running with the schematic design. We're going to be looking at the site plan, floor plan, preliminary cost estimate, discussion, and then the schedule as we start moving forward. Okay, so first looking at the overall site or campus for Coopertown, and probably the primary components is you get up on the screen, you'll see the existing Coopertown in sort of a darker gray. It's a little hard on the screen, but in the lighter gray, there's 2 additions at the bottom of the screen, as well as at the main entrance. You'll see there's a new administration and entrance component to the project. Thank you. Along with the building additions that we're looking at right now, we're also having discussions about the site specifically with the parking, and very similar to discussions that we had at Chatham Park, we're having to expand the parking in order to meet the municipal parking capacity. So roughly 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet. So you'll see up in the upper right, the existing parking lot is sort of highlighted in sort of the lighter gray, and then the darker gray is us sort of expanding the parking lot to the right and then downward. And we're also looking at a secondary exit at this time. And that's, we've been going back and forth about that. Yeah, for the bus loop. And we're going back and forth that just, what are the requirements for approvals and things of that nature. So again, approximately 109 parking spaces to meet ordinance, and we're also going to be revising the receiving dock for the building. Again, these are things that we did at Chatham Park related to the project. Okay, so this is the overall floor plan. We've spent a lot of time inputting existing conditions, actually from multiple construction projects over the years for the project, for everything from the mechanical, electrical, plumbing renovations that just happened a couple of years ago. But then we're also looking at original drawings with structure, but now we're starting to engage the structural engineer now that we've done the general planning for the building with the school district, both at the district level administration team as well as the building administration team. So some key components is a new administration secure vestibule, and a lot of this is very similar to what we did at Chatham Park. The nice thing here was, I think Chatham Park, we spent a lot of time evolving really what was the scope of the project, and that definitely changed from early in the project to, as we move through. The nice thing is now we're using that Chatham Park as the baseline for this building for not only in equity in the district, but it really gives the team very strong marching orders of what we're incorporating into the project, so we can move quickly with the project. So we're grouping the grade levels. For instance, K1 in the upper left-hand corner. You can see second grade, fourth grade, and then third and fifth going into the two additions down towards the bottom of the page. Modular classrooms, which are the fifth grade is going to be removed from the project. We're strategically locating special education throughout the building, which is the green that you see. The reason for the different lettering is just designations, for instance, whether it's a learning support, is it more of a general special education, is it autistic support, different designations throughout the building, okay? We're relocating the media center in the building, so the existing auditorium really isn't used. So very similar to what we did at Chatham Park, we're going to be infilling the floor. That will become the new library right at the main entrance in the main lobby of the building. And then the existing library will become the art classroom and an additional first grade classroom, okay? We're adding a stage and platform to the gymnasium. So sort of on the screen, the bottom of the gym to the middle right, we'll be adding a stage and then support spaces for that as well.
Its existing dimensions, or is that in addition to make?
That's working within the existing square footage. It turns out that it's quite a large gym existing. It's actually going to be a little bit larger than what's at Chatham Park, just square footage wise. As we were doing the comparison, and that was we were having discussions with the administration and the construction team of did we look at an addition, but it appeared that we can fit it within the building, reaping that cost savings. Okay, we're going to be reorganizing the cafeteria and the kitchen, again similar to what we did at Chatham Park. And what we're actually going to be doing is it's sort of circuitous to get to the cafeteria right now. You sort of go down the hallway and wrap around the building. We're going to be bringing the cafeteria right out to the main lobby. So your library, your cafeteria, and your administration will all be sort of on that main location of the building, and then we can lock down other sectors of the building for safety and security. Okay. Music classrooms, we're grouping those adjacent to the gymnasium. And we're also going to be starting to talk about subsequent phasing plans. How will we move students around during construction of the project, similar to what we did at Chatham Park. So really we're at a phase where we feel like we've locked down the overall layout of the building. We're going to go through some of the sectors of the building in a little bit more detail. Main office, we're going to be doubling the size of the administration and really bringing both the nurse, administration, and guidance all together. And then they'll also be connected through back corridors within the administration. So the students will either come to guidance, nurse, or the office, but they can all be interconnected so the staff can support each other. At the main entrance, there'll be a secure vestibule that brings somebody directly into the administration, and that will all go through the same lockdown protocols that you have at your other buildings for safety and security. Gymnasium, as I mentioned, this is sort of just a blow up of that, so you can see both the two music classrooms in the reddish color, and then that platform / stage at the bottom of the page that's being built within the existing gym currently, as well as storage and then support and ramp and ADA access up. I'm sorry, not ramp, but a lift to get up into that platform space because we don't have the room for ramping to occur. And then we will also be adding new wood floor throughout for the gymnasium. And then the two rear additions. And these have gone back and forth. We've gone through a couple iterations with the team. And ultimately, we're looking at grouping third grade and then fifth grade in one pod, but also storage, restrooms, single occupant toilets, whether for staff or to be utilized by the students. And the SG is small group instruction. So just not only the classrooms, but how do we have breakout space, storage, things of that nature.
What's the C? Is that
Oh,
just an
yeah,
additional
definitely.
classroom, or is?
Yeah, similar to Chatham Park, we had a couple open classrooms for collaboration. And we're going to have, so that's what that's in that C. It's C for classroom just because what we're going to try to do, we will designate that as a classroom, and it'll have everything that would be needed for a standard classroom. You'll pick up capacity for that.
And is that also to allow for years if there's a bubble and they need to have 5 rooms?
That would be an example. The other is just because the building is becoming larger, so that you don't just have the main lobby, that you sort of have almost these sort of satellite lobbies throughout the building, allowing the different sort of grade groupings to have some space to spread out into if they need to, inclement weather days, things of that nature. So, or bring multiple classrooms together, or that bubble year scenario that you mentioned. Good point. And then just going across to the other addition, just sort of it really for the most part it mirrors itself. This becoming the fifth grade, and then there's just been some moving around of whether it's small group instruction or learning support in this, working with the building principal. Okay. Just an overall campus. So again, to the far left, we'll be expanding that parking lot. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we'll also be expanding the hardscape play area on the side of the gymnasium. Right now, it's substantially undersized and really is not usable by the school. By a little over doubling the size of it, it'll become more usable for the student body. Exactly. Yeah, that was something we heard loud and clear that we're trying to address. Okay.
I just had a question while you're on the new building additions, which are sort of at the very top center, the new wings. It looks like how much space does it impact the playing fields at all?
It does slightly impact the play fields, but not, you still do maintain them generally. I'm
Okay.
sorry, this doesn't have I was looking for a pointer. Oh. So.
And if
We-
you could point out the modulars, are they the ones that are between the white roof and the baseball diamond?
Correct. Yeah, sort of the white roof, the one classroom going back, and then the baseball field is the modulars currently. Correct, that will be removed. Okay. And again, at the main entrance, we'll be bringing that administration out. And also, there's also been a lot of looking at sight lines, being able to monitor people approaching the building for safety and security.
There's also,
Oh.
sorry, on the
Yeah.
site plan, there's the interior courtyard, the larger one that's kind of in between the white roofs, but there's the little.
The little one at the.
Space that's near the entrance, is that going to be filled in and part of the hallway
Yes.
now?
So we'll be infilling that, and maybe if I go back maybe it's easier just to.
That would be adjacent to where the.
Yeah, I want to stay. I guess I want to stay on the.
Left of that cafeteria.
Yeah, so it's the left of the cafeteria, and so by infilling that, then it allows us to bring the cafeteria out onto that main corridor, main commons, correct, and then you have, so then it's hard to see on the screen, but we're also looking at lockdown doors that each of the wings can be closed down after hours. That's both a safety and security measure, but also it's just an advantage of then after hours, more for general use by the school. You can, for instance, close 2 sets of doors, you lock down that sector of the building, gives you more options for after-hour use. Okay. Okay. So cost estimate. We're very preliminary at this point. Probably a large note is, just like I mentioned, as far as the layout of the overall approach and the scope that was developed at Chatham Park, we also have the advantage now of looking at the budgets and the bids that came in for Chatham Park. So what we did was we took the bids and did sort of a forensic analysis of it. And generally, you had about $144 a square foot for renovation and $435 a square foot for additions. So then we tied that into the current square footages with the design. So roughly it's about 10.7 for renovations. It's about 8.9 for additions. And then we have an allowance of $2 million for the project. Again, we're very early in developing the site work and the engineers getting involved with that. That develops an overall scope for the biddable component of the project of about $21.6 million. Working with Ken, we're looking roughly at about $4.3 million worth of site work, or I'm sorry, soft cost. That's really just more of a 20% calculator right now, calculation for planning purposes. Some owner direct cost, gym floors, equipment, again, very similar to what we've done previously, of $250,000. We will be looking at phasing temporary space requirements. We're very early in the game, so that's, at this point, it's to be determined. It's really hard to put even sort of an allowance to that right now, because we need to sort of sit down and lay that out, or really Ken's team needs to start to lay that out, and then we'll go back and
Much better
forth.
when we come back in December.
Yep.
We'll have much more detail on that.
And then so that creates an overall total project of roughly $26 to $27 million for planning purposes right now, for all of you, and then working with your financing team too.
You could just reiterate, because I'm sure
Yeah.
there's people who would look at that, and say, we're keeping Coopertown, right? Like, that's a big number, but like at Chatham, there are the additions, but there are also upgrades throughout the building, like with the amenity spaces, the classrooms, like the whole building will be getting some refresh.
Yes, we will be we will be doing obviously additions, so we'll be adding 20,000 square feet to the building. It'll be becoming much larger. But correct, the reason we are spending $144 a square foot, or at least planning purposes, is we will be doing a refresh of the building. So we will be replacing flooring, ceiling, painting throughout, visual display, cabinetry, casework throughout the building. We'll be doing work in restrooms. We'll
Library,
be
music
refiguring.
room, art room.
Library, exactly. Kitchen will be getting a complete overhaul with new equipment and expanded so it can serve the students quicker and more efficiently. So really holistically, when the project's done, for all intents and purposes, it will be a brand new building throughout. Whether you're you really won't be able to, noticeably see the difference between the new additions and the existing building. And that was the goal at Chatham Park, and that is the goal here. That the whole building will be upgraded, and you've got the advantage of taking advantage of the bones of the existing building. It needs to be refreshed, but you don't need to rebuild the whole structure of the building, re-roof the building, which has just been completed. A lot of mechanical system work that you've just done in the past few years, we're sort of knitting all of that together. The advantage of that is a new building would be, is what we saw at Chatham Park, $435 a square foot versus $144. So the savings to the taxpayer is a whole new building would be roughly 3 times this value based on what we saw there. So that's a substantial savings, but also modernizes a building that essentially will be brand new at the end of the day. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. And then key dates, December 19th, we'll be setting the budget a little bit more detailed as we start getting further along with the design team, and not just looking at past bids, but really sort of in more detail developing the budget. We'll also be bringing an Act 34 booklet review and approval to you in January. We're looking at 100% documents in March, bidding in the month of April. I'm sorry, bringing the bids in the month of April, and then potentially then in the end of April approving the bids, and then contractors would mobilize next summer. So what we're trying to do is be a little bit ahead of the schedule that we had for Chatham Park as we start to move forward. And then the ultimate goal is, just like Chatham Park will finish the summer of 25, then the following summer in 26 will be substantial completion for the project. Bring the building online. Okay. So try to go efficiently through that. I can answer any questions or.
Just have one
Yeah,
thing I'd like to
definitely,
bring
Chuck.
up. We do have to go to zoning. There are a few variances that we need. We need conditional use, and the parking lot is close enough to the property line. It's within a setback. So there are things that we need to go through. We don't really see much of a concern with that. Also with the road, cutting in the entrance into Coopertown, that is a PennDOT road, so we do have to go through additional permitting for that, but again, not a huge deal, just a little more cost and time and effort, but it all fits within this schedule. So we don't see any concern with the approval processes at all.
I know one of the things that we allowed was some presentation to the community around Chatham Park to understand that project. Will that be built into the schedule as well, to reach out to the neighbors around Coopertown?
Yeah, so as part of the planning, the district is required, send out notices to people within 200 feet of the property line. And then we will do a little town hall session like we did at Chatham Park. If that won't be probably, I would guess we'd do that in early spring, maybe even the, February timeframe, once we really have the plans locked in. Invite, parents and adjacent neighbors.
I would guess maybe the neighbors there would appreciate the additional parking on site, as that is a place that hosts events and activities, maybe less parking in the neighborhood then.
I had a question, and I don't know if it's for Dr. Rushi, but I think it came up for Chatham. So full-day kindergarten, and I know we do like enrollment projections. Does this make us in the future, maybe future ready for full-day kindergarten?
What I have responded to that question, Dr. Shelton, because we have been asked that as we've made some of our visits to, PTO meetings. The additions to these buildings allow for expansion. Where that expansion comes, we don't know. We have enrollment projections, but it's very important that we monitor those enrollment projections, and we look every so often to see if they need to be updated in some way. If they stay stabilized. As I said, there's room for growth in those buildings, but if our enrollment exceeds what's currently projected without the addition of a new program, we'll have to go to an alternate.
But ultimately, this does give us more space.
Dr. Shelton, it definitely gives us more space. How we fill it
Right.
is yet to be determined, but it definitely provides more space.
Okay, great, thank you.
Right. But I'll give you a brief example. The numbers that you'll see soon when we provide the board with the enrollment presentation in the fall, you'll see that enrollment is growing at Manoa. So space that was available at Manoa is no longer. That's going to be the tricky part in looking at how to move forward with any kind of a new program.
Okay. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Looks good.
Okay, next we have Jamie Schlesinger from PFM, our financial advisors, to talk about the remaining renovation financing needed to close out Chatham Park and start on Coopertown.
Good evening, everyone. Well, thanks for having me. And unfortunately, the Yankees are losing, so I'll be in a bad mood for today. I saw a fair amount of it, don't worry. So tonight, I'm going to talk about the revision to the update of both projects at this point in time. I think what's important to point out is, in the previous presentations that we've made to the board, there's always been a plan of having a multi-step financing alternative for this exact reason, to provide some flexibility for adjustments to project costs with an ultimate plan for what I call cleanup issuance that's done at the back end. The good news with all of this is our plan for structuring of it really hasn't changed much in the way we'll take principal payments over the course of time. So what you'll notice here when I go through the numbers with the update and the cost, the tax impact is not dramatic despite some increased costs compared to previous permutations that we've run. So that's the good news here. And then secondarily, we're always generally pretty conservative when we talk about the interest rates that we assume in our financing alternatives. So I always like to come in at higher estimates, and then when we get through the project itself and do the financings, we hope to come in lower. So like everything else we see with, planning for these, we want to be conservative when we're planning for all this. I always show this graph, and I'll be brief on this because most people may ask this. Well, the Fed dropped interest rates. Did the bond rates go down? No, is the answer. So much of that was because the Federal Reserve expectation was that the rates were going to come down, and there's expected some more coming down over the remaining of this year. So if you look in the bottom chart that we always show, that interest rate really stayed relatively flat even after the Fed dropped interest rates. The one thing you will notice, and Tony can probably describe this, is your deposit rates with some of your accounts have gone down a little bit because of that. So we're still looking at, I have it noted in one of my pages, you're still receiving about 5% earnings on your money, but you're not getting 5.25 or 5.5 anymore. So that may be one thing you'll notice is if the Fed drops rates again or over the next year, you may see some reduction in your interest expense when it comes to your investments. I will only touch on this briefly. As we talked about, we always go through a long-term process. This will be done in 3 steps. There are considerations for arbitrage that we always need to consider. So when we do borrow at 3.5 or 4%, if you do earn 5%, depending on the type of financing we do, you may have to pay back the IRS your arbitrage rebate. So that's something we will work with you and monitor over the course of time. All depends on the interest rates that you earn on the borrowed funds, but always understand any money we borrow, you can invest it up to the yield at least. The first issue we did last year, we borrowed at $15 million or less. That was called small issuer exempt. In that case, you can keep all the earnings, and that was by strategy. So we've been doing that from day one, and that's a good thing. Briefly touch on this. This is just your debt portfolio right now. Your current total principal that the district is paying is about $141 million as of today. Annual debt service in the bottom right-hand corner is about $13.5 million per year. So that's kind of the bogey that we are currently at right now. I briefly will touch on this. Because of the revision to the amounts of the projects between Coopertown and Chatham Park, we made some revisions to the draw schedule. These are not final, as you know, because we're clearly going to be going through a bidding process, but we are using this as a planning tool for when we may enter into the bond market again because of the step process. So when I show in these numbers and show the analysis, we may move in a month earlier or a month later. It all depends on how much money you have at the point in time when you're ready to pay for the projects itself. But in all cases, we're utilizing an assumption of interest earnings to offset some of the project itself, and again, have enough money to cover both projects at the same time in some cases. So you've seen this in the past, but this is just an update to our model. When you look at the colored sheet, the blue column was the refinancing we did earlier this year. The yellow column was the $15 million issuance we did earlier this year. So those are locked in and done. So now you have the red and the green. These are the new assumed borrowing amounts necessary to cover the cost of the estimates that we just described earlier today, or earlier tonight. In this case, we are shooting for probably a early 2025 issuance at this point in time, which will be close to $25 to $26 million at this point. If the planning and the bidding comes in, as expected, we would then have to do a third transaction starting in 2026. It could be as early as January. We will determine when that is needed, really based on the timing of the projects itself. It may happen that we have to do something later in 2025, or we could hold off a little bit into 26. It really just comes down to the timing here. We'll let the projects determine when we go out to finance. The reason why we always split these up, it's really to give you as a board and the taxpayers the ability to phase in any tax impact or revenue enhancement necessary to offset the debt service that will come on from the borrowings itself, and that is exactly what we're showing here. We would be utilizing a wraparound debt service structure as we've always done before. The debt would be amortized over about 20 years, and based on these assumptions with all of these projects, we'd use about a $500,000. That's about what we need, about 0.47 mils all in between the tax increases necessary. So a 0.11 mils, 0.18 in the 26 year, and 0.18 in the 28 year. So kind of 0.11, 0.18, 0.18 again. That's kind of what you need over the next 3 years to offset the debt service that comes on. That would be kind of a level phase in, and that's a little bit higher than what we showed in the past, but again, we can do this with an efficient transaction. Maybe comes in a little less after we go through the process of bonds.
So Jamie, can you describe that? I'm seeing, and I know it's hard for anyone.
It's small on the screen, I know.
Right. So the net local effort is what would be in our annual budget to pay to debt service,
Yes.
to pay interest and principal on our obligations. It looks like with those millage increases that you described, that gets our kind of annual commitment for debt service from 12.7 last year, 13.5 next year, up to 15.7.
That's correct.
That looks like it lasts for 5 years, 15.8 million, and then it starts to go down.
Yes.
I guess the question is, why do we ramp up to 15, almost $16 million and then see it come down? Is there a way to not go up that high and kind of push some of those later?
There's just so much interest that kicks up from the principal that we borrow. So we can't, without doing any debt restructurings and things like that, to adjust for that amount. So by strategy, we are allowing for a drop off in the future, and that is really to give the school flexibility for maybe the next round of potential, renovations, upgrades in the future, to do some more wraps.
Yep.
So we want to, by design, do it this way. We are still able to amortize the debt in a reasonable manner, 20 years or less, which is within the useful lives of the buildings. They'll be here longer than 20 years, right?
Hopefully they are.
And that is really the plan here. So, unfortunately, we can't do a whole lot without, really doing some drastic restructurings that would really be costly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think from a perspective of how we're phasing it in, this is about the lowest impact we can get without doing anything out of the ordinary.
Okay.
And just to follow up on that, so I'm looking at the previous slide, so we have certain debt, our obligations that expire, and that's why it comes down.
That's exactly right. So what ultimately happens is I look at this as a big picture. All of your debt portfolio on that previous, oh, it's not going in the right direction. Oh, no. I guess I can't go backwards. Well, sorry about that, guys. If you could. Yeah, go to the previous page. There you go. So no one can really see that, but that's your debt portfolio. So you have several bond issues outstanding, and over the course of time, the principal has been paying down. So we constantly wrap around each one with each issuance. Some have refinancings involved and things like that, but you can see that's what's happening at this point in time. It's about, a $13 million and it drops to 11 and then drops to 2, right? So then we're putting in, an additional, $50 or $60 million in there, and we're able to put the principal in the years where there's, only $2 million previously budgeted. So that, again, gives you that lower impact to your taxpayer because we're able to do it in a reasonable manner in that fashion. So that is very normal for local school districts.
And I guess my follow-on question is, seeing almost $16 million of annual debt service, our annual operating budget is over $150 million, so allocating 10% of a school district budget to debt service for, the investments in its capital buildings, projects, is 10% a reasonable carry?
10% is reasonable, yes. I think if we went to 15, 20, we'd be having a different conversation, but 10% is a reasonable amount. And I think we're in a good position still.
Thank you.
Your tax base can support this. If you have a strong tax base in general, the value of a mill is quite strong here. That's what's, gives you the ability to kind of do these type of things at a, reasonably low amount of tax impact. I know every tax impact's high to everybody, but if you understand what I'm saying, I have some places the tax base is a couple $100,000 per mill, and it's a real hit on everything. So I think how we're doing this, there's roles of upgrades and renovations that happen every 20 years traditionally with schools. We just happen to be fitting into that window right now. We get through these, and I think you've got some time to make some adjustments and do what you need to do, but I think we're still in a good position. We didn't talk about timing, but I think it's very important. I looked at that schedule earlier today, that you'll be coming back in December to talk about some revisions or updates to the amounts. Personally, you're going to have to see me those meetings too, because we're going to need to get some authorizations to move forward with bond issuances. So we're ready to go, in early 2025 because of the cash flow related to the projects itself. So assuming you move forward, with the projects, I'm expecting you'll probably be selling bonds in January, potentially February. That does fall pretty well in line with, when your audit gets done. So we'll be able to have good financial information to talk to the rating agency about. So, I'm feel comfortable with that.
I had a question on there's a difference between the bond proceeds and the deposit to construction fund. Could you explain?
Yeah, there's a few things involved with it. Some have cost of issuance associated with it. There's also original issue premium and things that are kind of tied to the bond issuance itself. But what we back into is how much is necessary to kind of fund the cost of the project ultimately. So we, with purposes of that previous page, which I can move it. That draw schedule, that takes into account how much money is going to be delivered with the principal, less costs, and other items. So we have enough money to cover both.
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm just looking at it, it's like almost 2 or a little over 2%. Is that a reasonable?
That's a reasonable estimate. We use that for, again, planning purposes. Yes. I will point out, you may notice a column that says capitalized interest. We've used that in the past. That would be borrowed interest on a couple of the transactions to allow us to phase in the millage in some of those years. So we would take that and have that set aside for debts, for a portion of debt service payments to kind of phase in your millage impact. More to come on that in a future conversation. I just want to point out that's what that is. Questions? You're getting used to this at this point in time.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks. I'll probably see you in the next month and a half. Okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dianna Cook and Lisa Today from Chartwells Compass Group Dining Services to talk about food service operations.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. It sounds like you have a pretty busy agenda, so squeezing us in is greatly appreciated. And it's my first time being here with all of you, so thank you. Just to give a little bit of background, I'm going to say started appearing here at the end of spring, beginning of summer, and have been working with Lisa and Josh, and we've had a great time so far, so looking forward to continuing that. I think we're taking a little bit of a different approach. I'm going to pass that over to Lisa here in a minute, but wanted to introduce in a couple ways. So we have everything that's in front of you. I'm not sure if it's on your screens as well, but it's also up here. A little bit of a meet the team. As we mentioned, everybody always knows the chef, right? I've always said when you walk with a chef, especially if they're in their chef coat, and whoever it is walking with them, it's like that person doesn't exist because everybody focuses on the chef. It's great. So everyone already knows Lisa and Josh. Myself, I'm Dianna Cook, so I'm the area director. I won't go through everybody up here, but some of the faces that you may have seen are Chef Guy. Look at that, another chef. And Allie, who from our marketing team has been here quite a bit. But we'll be going back and forth a little bit to not confuse you. I'm just going to step over.
We just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. Last time I was here to talk about our program. I just gave you an overview in the spring of some of the things we wanted to do this year. I wanted to give you an update tonight on what we have accomplished and what we're going to move forward with for the remainder of the year. Just a couple facts about our food service. This is our 5th year here, so we've been here for over 4 years. We started in the middle of the year. Our meal participation at breakfast is 15% and rising. We're currently averaging 30% participation for our lunches, and that's just an average of all the schools, elementary, middle, and high school combined. We serve over 42,000 meals every month. That includes breakfast and lunch. And last year, our rebates were over 200,000, and that contributes to keeping the cost of our food low every month. And just facts about the overall percentage, we currently have about 18% of the students in the district that qualify for free and reduced price meals. We call them free and reduced price meals, but reduced price meals are actually free now. So, some of the accomplishments, we are going to feature student choice quarterly. We actually are going to feature student choice next month, November, at the high school. We have been featuring our Global Eats program, which features different ethnic foods every month in the high school and middle school. We've continued our grab and go breakfast program for the elementary schools. Our participation has still remained at 20% or higher. We perform safety audits quarterly. We select 2 to 3 schools every quarter and go around the kitchens, making sure everyone has the proper protective equipment, everything's safe in the kitchen, people have just the whole environment and the tools that the staff needs to perform their work safely. And as you know, the 3 dishwashers have been in schools, installed in 3 of the schools and have been working properly. And little by little, we're trying to reduce more waste by trying to serve more things without using disposables. We feature our Discovery Kitchen in some way every month at the elementary schools. As a matter of fact, last month, Chef Josh was able to feature a hydration station in all the elementary schools where he had 3 different types of flavored water and some handouts about how good hydration is for you and different ways you can get hydration. And the kids really enjoyed it. Just a little something different in the cafeteria to create some excitement. In the high school, we had our refresh with our signage, painting, and serving area changes. As a matter of fact, Moving forward this year, we're trying to upgrade the quality of our program, increase the variety. We just received a new piece of equipment that we had mentioned last spring. We invested in the school district. It's called an impinger, and this is going to improve the program, the quality of the pizza and the items that we serve at our pizza station. Better quality, more efficiency, and hopefully more variety for the students at the high school. We're really excited about that. We're actually hoping to get that up and running next Monday. Training for all the staff yearly. We have a big meeting in the beginning of the year, and then we have ongoing trainings that include trainings in sanitation, safety, and allergy training. We did feature a new hot breakfast station at the high school, serving made-to-order and cooked-to-order hot toasted breakfast sandwiches. We featured that in the beginning of the year, and we're going to try to continue that once we get, we had some staffing changes, so we're going to try to continue that, get that up and running again when we are better staffed. And Josh has already volunteered for a couple of wellness days at the secondary schools. Just some pictures around the cafeteria, some catering. There's a picture up there. Josh and I attended a back-to-school night at the middle school. We've had presence at most of the back-to-school nights, whether it was Josh or I or cafeteria managers. We got some great feedback from parents, a lot of nice compliments. We really enjoyed, lots of questions answered, and we really enjoy doing those to get the information out about the programs we have. Believe it or not, there's still parents that don't realize that we have free breakfast available at the schools. So just another picture of, we had big back-to-school barbecue where we served over 1,000 people. Everyone in the administration, including, it was nice to have some of the board members there. We also had our regional chef attend and help out with all the things that we serve. There's a picture of Chef Josh and the hydration station. And then there's also a picture of our global eats. On this particular day, we featured foods from China. So we just different ethnic regions. Some pictures of Chef Josh in the classroom doing some classroom demos. He's hoping to do some of those in November and December. And he'll contact we'll be contacting the elementary schools. Just some more pictures of another barbecue we had. We had an Oakmont barbecue for the full staff at Oakmont. This is far left corner is a picture of our turbo breakfast station that we had. I think the kids really enjoyed something new, fresh and hot, made to order, and then some catering that we did in the district. Far bottom corner is an enhanced picture of we call it now our extra toppings bar at the middle school, where we're featuring lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. The kids really love the strawberries and grapes. And so it's really great that we're getting the kids to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables. So we feature a lot of those on our toppings / extra bar. Extra means just extra sides for their meals. And then just, what's next? We had talked about I talked about all our programs: Discovery Kitchen, Global Eats, Student Choice, and Mood Boost. Couple more things that we're looking to do. We're introducing we're calling it a build room at the middle school. We're finally able to utilize the back serving area at the middle school. We just put in a new salad bar. Students can help themselves to their own made-to-order salad bar. We're featuring lots of different fresh fruits and vegetables, meat alternates, and fresh whole grains on there. We just opened the hot and toasty station, which features our brand new turbo ovens in addition at that room. Because of staffing, we haven't been able to feature it every day, but on the few days that we've started our station, we served over 100 sandwiches, and the kids were really excited about it. So some of the goals we had for the middle school are finally coming to fruition. And we're hoping that in a couple more weeks, when we have everything that we need for the stations, everything's working, we're gonna have a big grand opening and just let the kids know about that. Again, our high school, we're hoping to get our impinger oven working and up and running in Monday. And then again, we're gonna feature student choice, discovery kitchen, features at the elementary schools every month. We'll have a mood boost presentation that Chef Josh is gonna do. The picture on your front cover is one of the celebrations we did in a prior year. And then this month in particular, we featured Apple Crunch Day, where we had 4 different kinds of apples locally grown, and we had those out on the serving lines, and we had little signs so the kids were able to choose, you know, Red Delicious, Golden Delicious, Honey Crisp, and Gala apples. So, and it was really, I was at one of the elementary schools that day, and I was really excited to see how many kids took the apples. They said, "Are these free?" I said, "Of course they're free. They come with your lunch." So that was really fun. And then at the end of the month, in cooperation with Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, we're going to feature a PA preferred meal day. And I'm not sure, but we may have visitors from the Department of Agriculture. They said they would let us know, but we're going to feature 4 locally grown foods at the high school: mushrooms, apple cider, kale, and butternut squash. And we're going to feature those in different menu items, and then we're going to have some sampling for the kids, and we'll have some signage out there. So that's something that we're doing at the high school in October. And that is pretty much, excuse me, our update for what's to come and what has happened so far.
So I wanted to go over two other things as well, not necessarily on the presentation, but some items that Tony and I had talked about. One was the administrative review that we're in, you know, I wouldn't say in that cycle, right? It's happening moment in time. The business office was able to, in a timely manner, get what's called the offsite review submitted. That was due on Tuesday this past week. Lisa, over the summer, attended a training with our team that everybody district-wise who is in the administrative review that lives in Pennsylvania, that coming up into this year, had an additional training on how to enter the menus and utilize the production sheets out of Primero Edge, which is, from a Pennsylvania perspective, the system that is looked at as the one to use for this. So we utilize a system, and if you look online, our menu comes from a system we call MenuWorks or Webtrition, and that is our system that we use on every other week. And it's a great system. It's a wonderful tool. But to simplify the process, it's mirrored for our test week for the administrative review in Primero Edge, so that it's using like-for-like data. So we're hoping from that perspective, utilizing that like-for-like data, it'll be in a better place from a menu perspective. But we've had, I'm going to say several, it's at least 2 of our dietitians, our registered dietitians within Chartwells, look through the menu, scope through, recommend some changes, and we've made all of those very timely. So next week is actually our test menu.
And part of the review process is that they take 1 week's menus and they analyze for the criteria. We're measured on calories, fat, saturated fat, and sodium. There's not really any other nutrients that they focus on, but they're the ones that are that they focus on during the review. And further down, probably sometime in November or December, we'll be sending that information to the state.
And I think it's important to note too that the administrative review is not something we requested to kind of evaluate our program. It's something that the the Division of Food and Nutrition puts us on an annual cycle. So every 5 years we're due for one where they come in and look at all the components and make sure we're following all the regulations. So it's something that's different than our annual audit that we do fiscally, but this one is every 5-year cycle.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any questions on the administrative review before I go into the next topic? Okay. So I know recently, and I believe that all of you were potentially either copied or forwarded an email regarding, I'll call it the nutritional values of the menu, I think is a good way to phrase it. I guess what we want to assure you and everybody else is we follow the USDA guidelines on all of our menus. That system that we use, MenuWorks, has a checks and balances built right into it. That if a menu item is placed on that menu and either does not fit the daily requirements or the weekly requirements, essentially it stays red. And when it fits those requirements, the menu turns green. So from that perspective, everything that we serve, based off of how many of those items, the participation, and how many people are receiving those items, that qualifier exists right there. The main feature that I believe was being talked about was that breakfast menu at our elementary schools.
Breakfast, right, yeah.
So the breakfast menu at the elementary schools, which is grab and go. But it's grab and go for a really great reason. In those elementary schools, when the students arrive, they have 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
They have 10 minutes to get their lunch. They also eat breakfast. I keep converting breakfast to lunch. Breakfast for lunch also tastes really good. But they have about 10 minutes to get that breakfast, then they also eat that breakfast in the classroom. So to simplify that in the aspect of giving them the items that they need, it's in a bag ready to go for them. So based off of that, there are items they're not hot egg sandwiches that are then refrigerated and served cold. They're items that are ready to go, ready to consume, especially in that classroom. So we still have seen that participation go up 20%. So our breakfast overall is supporting what we are doing. The aspect of serving a hot meal, not to say that it's not possible, but I think what would be nice to do would be to do a pilot and pick one of the elementary schools that has maybe a more updated kitchen and the facilities to be able to do that, to pilot what that could look like. And what does it look like to, let's say, 200 students come in? And are we able to provide the meal that they want in that 10-minute span to get to their classrooms and then eat that? It's not something that we're saying, no, we won't do. It's just something that we're saying the way that it's being done right now seems to be the most practical. I think it's also important to note that a Pop-Tart that we serve in elementary school is not a like-for-like Pop-Tart that you buy at the grocery store. So there is a difference between that. Many of those items, there's a difference between them. The whole grain feature, I think, is the most important part of that. Additionally, not this year, but going into the next school year, there'll be new regulations on sodium and sugar. So we as a company are already working on recipes to identify and reduce those items. We're also working with our vendors, so Kellogg's, General Mills, that make these products for school breakfast and school lunch. They're already working on that reduction as well.
And since we implemented the program last year, we did make a lot of changes to the breakfast program. Again, unfortunately, we're only able to serve ready-to-eat, shelf-stable meals in most cases. We do offer a lot of fruits and vegetables. We have cut back on serving juice to 2 times a week. On the other days, it's always 2 fresh fruits. We've been serving a bigger variety of fruits. And we also have cut back to just serving, we're regulated to serve 2 different types of milk at breakfast and lunch. So we're serving low-fat white and skim white only. We are not serving any chocolate milk. So we've done a lot of things to reduce whatever sugar content we could. And, just to make, as Dianna said, just to make the clarification that these are school-made products for breakfast. I mean, these are regulated products for school breakfast. They have a child nutrition label on them, and we are regulated as what we can serve. So when the state comes and does the audit that they'll be coming to do in December, they're going to take a look at the products and they're going to take a look at the labels, and they'll see that, what contribution it is to the breakfast. For example, a cereal bar contributes one whole grain. So, so everything has a label, and it has to contribute to the breakfast meal pattern in some way. Again, we are looking forward to getting new products next year, and, we're always looking to see what else we can do to improve the program and keep, the levels of sugar as low as possible.
One of the other pieces that was mentioned was a feeling of disparity, that we were serving these items to those who, because breakfast was free. So because if somebody was qualified, for example, for a free or reduced, now everybody's receiving the free breakfast. And so there was an underlying tone that it was financially driven, that we were giving these items only to, and because it was free, or only to those who would qualify. And that is not the case. Every elementary school is treated exactly the same. And the reason why the middle school and the high school are able to have a different type of breakfast is simply because they're able to eat that breakfast in the cafeteria.
Diana, we appreciate your enthusiasm for the work, and always appreciate Lisa's willingness to think outside the box and see what else that she can do for us. There is one item, though, that I do need to comment on, because these meetings are recorded and broadcast, and we're able to offer, in conjunction with you, the breakfast at the elementary school, and it involves our teaching staff
Absolutely.
being part of it. So I'm a little nervous that people will think, oh my gosh, we're going to have hot breakfast next week.
It won't be next
that
week.
will require a tremendous amount of planning, discussion. Our teachers cannot be involved in serving hot breakfast.
No.
So I just don't want, I have to say that before that becomes the perception that it will be happening quickly.
Absolutely.
But we're interested in the discussion and what the potential for it would be.
We're not going to say we're not going to look at it.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. There's always,
I'm a glass half full type of person.
I could follow up on, I think there was a piece around the nutrition quality of the food, but there's also the feedback from the community that was expressed. And I think in the contract we do, there's an advisory committee. There's a question about an advisory committee that allows parents and students to give feedback on the menu.
Absolutely.
Could you talk about that process?
well, we're in the process of forming one. I have met with students. Over the years, as a matter of fact, I have a meeting set up with a group of students at the middle school later this, next week, actually. So I have met with students and faculty, in groups. A formal advisory committee is in the process of being formed now, with, probably, a selection of, parents, students, and, administration.
Okay, I mean, I guess I'm looking at the contract and it says, I certify the district has created an advisory board. So we're just now creating it, is that?
It's, a formal committee has not really been in place. We've had the wellness committee meetings, and we've had feedback and discussion at the wellness committee meetings that meet the criteria for an advisory committee. But I think right now we're in the process of creating a separate committee altogether.
Okay, and so for next year, the changes, we're going to get input then from parents and students?
And I have
Been
met
getting
with
it from
PTAs.
students,
I've also
and you've
met-
gone to PTA meetings.
I've gone
I think
to
Lisa has
PTA.
received input, but
Yeah.
Right.
from a separate group identified as an advisory, not necessarily.
Correct, yeah, and today, to add into that, we had separate meetings with both the middle school and the high school principals. And that was one of the questions that I asked as well. We talked about, the breakfast being served by many. All of these features are in conjunction. It's in conjunction with availability of, the student time frame and when to do that, and who to pull in and which parents to pull in. And the advisory committees are wonderful, and you get a lot of different feedback from them, the same feedback, or maybe the same, maybe a little different, that we receive in just talking with students daily, or talking with teachers and principals, and collecting all of that information to make changes.
Yeah. I think that two-way communication, it's important to help, with this sort of dialogue and explain, the rationales and limitations.
Absolutely. One of the other pieces from that too is we've talked about doing little blurbs of did you know? That way, whether it's in a newsletter that goes home to parents or the amazing video that's done at the middle school, that information then can also be shared as far as breakfast being free or what qualifies, how many items, when your student comes to lunch, how many items can they get to be a meal, and also how many items do they need to get to be a meal, and just go through that communication and education, because there's many parents that maybe just don't necessarily know the full program going into it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Tusky, did you say in addition to the administrative review that's going on, at some point we'll be looking at the contract renewal?
Yes.
Also an item for this year?
Yep. So part of the informational items, we are in the renewal year of our contract with Chartwells as our food service management company. So we would be up for issuing a request for proposal for services that would continue starting with the 25-26 school year. So that process will begin in probably early January, where we will develop an RFP to and based on a template that the Division of Food and Nutrition has for us to follow. They will approve our RFP, and then we will put it out for advertisement. It'll follow the traditional public advertisement where it's out for 3 weeks in 2 different forms of publications. In addition to that, they have a list of food service management companies that are recommended. So we must also send that to 5 of those companies on the list. So in addition to the RFP being advertised, we do that as well. Coming into March and April timeframe is when those interested companies would submit a proposal to the district. We are utilizing the services of someone that will help us to evaluate the RFPs that come back in. We will also have a committee of 3. We'll decide at some point what that committee will look like. Board member, administrator, business manager, how we'll want to see that once those bids are kind of consolidated together. And then by May 1st, PDE has it that we should be submitting our proposed contract to them for final approval. So before the board will actually take action on that, we'll send it to them. And generally by May 15th, they look for that packet to be finalized, to be approved, so that by June 10th, we can get that final packet that's been approved by the board to PDE to kind of give their final sign off that we've met all the qualifications to do the RFP process for food services, because there is a specific guidelines that we have to follow for that steps.
All right, something to look forward to.
Exactly, something to look forward to, most definitely. Solar for schools. So we actually were notified that yesterday the guidelines have been issued for the Solar for Schools grant program. I will pass out, if you have not had a chance to look at it, have been issued. So now we know what exactly has to be followed if the board would like to go forward with this program. I highlighted some areas just of importance of things that we're going to need to kind of put in place if we're going to do this program. One of them is that we do have to have a solar site assessment. So the Solar for Schools grant program kind of lays out what that is. It's on page 1, it shows under definitions that it has to be a qualified provider. Qualified provider being a certified North American Board of Certified Engineer Practitioners or solar thermal installer, or has successfully installed a minimum of 3 PV or solar thermal systems. They would provide a solar facility site assessment for us, and then it shows under that number 2, what they actually have to put together for us. So the proposed location, the orientation of the system, a solar shading study, a cash flow analysis, a cost estimator, and then a maintenance and operation plan. So it has to be pretty detailed what this contractor would be doing for us. And it's important to know that while they are required to be qualified to actually put in the system, they cannot do that as the site assessor. So it's a 2-part process. We have a site assessor and then someone who would actually do that installation and procurement of the panels for the district.
Would that be, I know that we discussed in SME? Subject matter
Subject
experts?
matter expert.
That would be the subject matter expert.
Okay.
Yes.
Now that individual, I guess I'm a little bit unsure who that person is. Would they fit the definition of being a qualified provider under what's in here? Certified North American, certified engineer and solid minimum of 3 PV, or the person has done that.
They would have to.
They would have to. So I would put it out to, I've been in contact with the engineer who's working on it for the township, for the library.
Right.
And the PA Solar Center also has someone. So I would put it out to them and just say, do you meet these qualifications? They would have to certify somehow that they meet those before they could be qualified. Because we don't want to be disqualified.
That's fine.
From submitting an application.
And then how would we select them, and how soon could we do that?
So, I guess that would be up to the committee. Do you want me to come back with more than one? Do you want me to kind of put it out there and make an assessment on what I get back to say, okay, as long as they check the boxes, we're okay with starting that application?
And what the cost would be.
And what the cost would be,
The
right.
cost
Yeah.
might come down to that's what the deciding factor
Right.
is.
Sure, I think that makes a lot of sense. I would trust you. I just want to be able to would we need to take a vote on that, the board, the regular board?
I would say that you probably would want to take a vote on actually proceeding with this as a total project. That
Okay.
you're going to make the, a motion to approve moving forward with the Solar for Schools
Okay.
grant and,
And that would go through the entire process, because I just don't want to get caught in this whole thing of like we discuss and then we, vote at the next one, and eventually we're in November. If we can package this all under one umbrella, if you will, and just say, let's just go ahead and, start this process, I think that would be a good vote to have at the next, at next meeting. A lot of this stuff, it sounds like we already have.
some of it we
have a
do.
lot of stuff.
Hopefully they could use the Bryn Mawr student study as
Yes.
some
Yes.
of
Yes,
the,
we could definitely.
I'm thinking the Mawr student study. I'm thinking Crabtree. I'm thinking
Crabtree
stuff that we
also
got
did,
years
yeah.
ago. We were working with the Joy and her. We have all this
The
stuff.
financial
The
analysis.
financial analysis.
Some important items for consideration. If you look at page 7, Exhibit 2, which has to be submitted with the application, speaks of other funds. So based on our market value aid ratio, we are eligible for $300,000 or 30% of the project cost, whichever is less. So the board has to somehow make the commitment and prove the commitment on how they will do the matching of that program. So if we find out the program is going to cost $800,000, and they'll give us 300, how are we going to support the other 500?
Right.
So we have to have that in line before we submit the actual application. The other item.
And we can include. Let me ask you. And I think that we can, because it's different funding sources. We can include the IRA federal funding sources of 30% in that match.
Right, I believe you are allowed to.
You can match state and federal. You can't match federal or state and state, though. So I believe because it's the state, we can match those.
Right, I believe because it does mention on item 11 on page 6 that whether the eligible applicant is seeking funding under the IRA. So I actually have a webinar tomorrow, so I can ask that question. If we go for the IRA, does that come out of our matching portion?
Okay.
And then another item that they also require is a resolution. So there's an authorized official resolution that's on the very last page, page 9.
To submit the grant.
Right, to submit the grant. So that would be something that would come to the board to actually approve that resolution.
Then outside a question, I guess one thing that I want to do, just in order to make this process move along fairly rapidly, when we get an SME, they'll be doing a lot of work, and it'll be a little bit back and forth. Would it make sense to reconvene the environmental ad hoc committee that we had a while ago to kind of be like a liaison. Would that make sense? Just in case SME has, just to ask SME kind of what to provide to us when they present and when they apply, rather than trying to bring it through different committees and different regular meetings. I think it might make sense to have another level in there.
Yeah, I
So-
think like a task force.
Task force, yeah, it can be
or
the
a
same.
Committee to focus on the Solar for Schools grant application and work with.
Well, the whole
subject
SME
matter.
work, because I mean, I think a couple of things the SME has to get, in addition to the solar, I mean, I definitely want to focus on Solar for Schools grant, but I mean, we have, 2 buildings currently where I think we want to evaluate solar, Linwood and Chatham, obviously. And then, I also want to look a bit more holistically. These grants are time sensitive, so I definitely want to hone in on these, but I also want to look at a sort of broader, energy consumption usage for the entire district, and then rope in Coopertown and some of the other schools and really take a deeper dive into that. So I do see this as a,
So I think that would require different kind of decisions or authorization from the board on what that scope is. But you did mention the timeframe, and I'm glancing here, does this packet tell us, like this packet just became available like yesterday?
Yesterday.
So does it have the timeframes on when an application period would open and close and decisions?
So right now, it's listing as November 1st, it opens and it closes on January 31st. I have a webinar tomorrow that I'm going to ask them that specific question about, once we submit the application, what's the turnaround time? Is it 30 days, 45 days? What does that look like, given the expansive?
And I think it would be interesting to know if there is an advantage to, like if the window is that 3-month period, is there an advantage to getting in first, or?
Is it rolling?
Do they not even review them until they're all in?
Then they're
That's
all
a good-
in and they're
that's a
all
good point.
evaluated the same, because I think that helps us understand, like, is it urgency over completeness, or a more complete process that maybe puts a better application together?
Or is
But-
it based more on need and the ability to produce more energy through this program, like, so?
Right, or
Does it
what
look
are
like
the
more of a
criteria?
success? Okay.
Yeah, I saw something with the state is divided into 3 regions.
Yes.
We're in the one close in around Philadelphia, and that they would distribute the grants across those 3
By region.
regions.
Yes.
But, yeah, are there other, I know there was some criteria about maybe more low-income communities, or if they were near a
Right.
Yeah.
They could
power
push some more.
plant or things like that, but what other criteria would be important for us
Okay.
to consider? But I think that one about timing and how promptly we submit, if that
Okay.
benefits us.
I guess I also want to figure out if we want to submit for just one site, and then if we have to prioritize which site that is, or if we want to submit
Right.
for multiple sites. I believe.
You have
What's the
to,
option
it's
for
site-specific.
combining sites?
no,
It's site-specific.
my understanding is it has to be a specific facility, building, or, common meter.
Okay, so I think that was a question that I had. What was the net metering in 2 miles that was mentioned? I'm looking at this.
Virtual metering.
Do you want to
The
go back to
microphone.
the microphone?
Okay, so the virtual net metering is so that an excess of energy produced at one site can be used at other sites that are within 2 miles.
Okay, and I was just wondering if that applies to the definition of a location under this grant. Do we know that yet?
Yeah.
Single meter
Yeah.
isn't that 2 mile net metering? Or it is? Do you want to go to the microphone? Thank you.
I haven't read the solar schools thing, but the virtual net metering just allows for billing with Pico. The solar installation would still be under a single meter.
Okay,
It does indicate here, location and square footage of proposed solar array relative to the size of the building. So I think it's per location as opposed to per meter. The net metering thing is just, like,
It's- it's-
transfer that.
It's just a
yeah.
PICO billing
Okay.
thing.
Just, yeah, yeah.
Okay. But I think that had been in an earlier contemplation of how we might be able to roll things out. There was some bundling that was maybe discussed, but if this grant isn't set up for
Yes, this is.
bundling, we should be strategic about
think that's-
when it
yeah.
makes sense to apply
I think it's for
it.
PPA.
I read a FAQ on the website, and I think that was one of the questions. But,
Okay.
I think what you're talking about, Bridget, was for PPA, a power purchase agreement. Then I think there was some kind of
Okay.
thing you could do within 2 miles, if memory serves.
And if there is interest, there is a webinar tomorrow given by the PA Solar Center. It's at noon. If anyone is available, I can send out the link.
You send it, yeah, please send it. I'll try to go. No promises, but I like to.
Other ones that have been recorded and they send out slides and
Yes,
things
correct.
afterwards.
I'm
so
sure they will
hopefully
do that.
That will be available. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest.
Okay.
Is there any other questions that we have to give to Mr. Tessa for him to think about or to be able to raise tomorrow?
I just had a quick question. You said something about the encumbrance of funds as part, so we apply for the grant, but we also have to guarantee that we can fund the remainder.
Yes. You have
Does
to
that
either-
encumber the funds, or do we just have to prove that we're solvent and?
We just have to prove it. So it says funding commitments from the applicant must be signed and dated. Funding commitments or term sheets provided by the lending institution must include the term rate and collateral conditions and must be signed and dated. So if we were going to go for bonds, we would have to have something, from Jamie that
Right.
shows that we can support that additional
Fine.
debt if needed.
Or
Okay.
we can show evidence of our capital balance.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I was getting, like.
Whether that would be a letter from the bank certifying, yes, these funds are
Right, got it.
available.
Okay,
point.
thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to, so I would just like to see something next meeting to vote on, to discuss and vote on bringing an SME and then, I think tomorrow, if I'm not able to go, I'll try to go, Tony, but if I can't, one question I guess I would ask, this may be more of something that, I don't know if it's worth asking at this webinar, but, we have multiple buildings. Should we apply for both of them? Should we pick one? Because for Haverford, we're a fairly well-off school district. We're probably not gonna get 2, but you never know. And one of the benefits that we do have is that we have buildings that are ready ready to move. And as long as we can hustle and get an SME on board to really do this analysis, pull it all together, present this, present information to the board, I think, as well. Because once we decide, we really, I think, should nail down more of these financials and get like a solid, solid number. Because we've seen, obviously, the Bryn study had some great information there on the optimistic, middle, conservative, mixed. Once we actually start putting in some numbers, we'll have probably much more solid numbers. We'll be able to, nail them down a bit more. So I'm hoping that the SME can provide that. But yeah, finding out what exactly, which ones to apply for, which one to apply for, I think would be helpful.
I guess my recommendation would be, whoever is going to put together the site assessment, they could say, here are here are 3 possible buildings that Haverford, I don't know how it would work, but I would imagine you could put forward, we could do it here, 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 and let them evaluate.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't think they do that or not. We can.
Guess we need more information from the.
Yeah, again, I think
the
it's a good question to ask that, I think.
Yeah, okay. Thank
It's
you.
exciting.
Thanks for the information.
And just to try to be clear and understand the next step, so we are looking for, under the language used under Solar for Schools, a qualified provider.
Yes.
And you have a couple of names that are a couple of companies or people that you could go to and get a cost estimate for that. But the scope initially is to assist us in evaluating the opportunity to apply for Solar for Schools, right?
In meeting the criteria in definition number 2, meeting all of those.
Being able to provide the solar facility site assessment. Okay.
Also, Jamie, or also you could get an idea of the time frame. How long it would take them to put these together? Like for both of them, because one person's slightly more expensive, but they can get done.
10 days.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I thought, and so I want to make sure that's still kind of valid, because, yeah, I heard 10 days, I think, and that struck me. 10 business days? Or,
Right.
that's 10 business days? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
The guy who said a couple of weeks, he doesn't know how much information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Like, we have a ton of stuff that we can just, like, kind of throw at them. But okay. Great.
So next item, just an audit update for the 23-24 fiscal year. The auditors were on site last week for a full week of site work. So they are compiling the data, and the goal is to have the audit presented to the board on December 12th, and then acceptance by the board on December 19th. So that's what their target is right now.
And that lines up well with PFM's timeframe for going to bond. So.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it does work perfect. There's a financial report that was included in the packet just for year-to-date September. Everything, it's still early with only really 1 month of school in that time period. Most of the things have been purchased. Revenue is starting to come in. Most of the revenue you're going to see coming in at this point is the tax, school tax revenue. Subsidies will come in throughout the year based on PDE's distribution schedule.
Yeah, it looks like 83% or 84% of our local taxes, right? Not much in on state or federal yet, but then yeah, looking at the proportions of expenditures and even like the major functions, you look at those and think, oh, how did we spend 25%? This is a report through the end of September, but then you do see all the purchase of supplies and some of the upfront costs. Okay.
One of the other items that Ken will be bringing for approval at the board, next week's board meeting, he had 2 proposals that he was adding for Chatham Parks project. One was for commissioning services for the HVAC system. So just a little bit of background on what that is. So you have a service that actually certifies the HVAC system, that it does what it's supposed to do, and they back that up with different reporting and just inspections of the system to make sure that it's doing what the intended purpose was of that system. And then roofing services to kind of just evaluate the roofing, make sure that that is done correctly, inspections, and we have that tied together.
I think we had those third-party verifications on the Linwood and other projects too, right? So it's a good practice to have.
Yes. And then one last item that we were talking about earlier today. It's been in the news, so I just wanted to bring it to the committee's attention. TD Bank had some issues with an anti-money laundering case. Does not affect the liquidity of our funds. Our funds are completely safe, but in case you see that in the news, just, for everyone to know that they are going through that. Their legal team's handling it. They're working at remediating it, getting their processes and procedures in place to make sure that that does not impact their business going forward. But it has no impact on our... Right, there's no risk on our investments. And even with, as far as going out for bonds, TD Securities is separate from TD Bank NA, so it's a separate and distinct organization. Just in case it's... That's all I have for this evening.
Okay, so this has been a long committee meeting already, but there is time for public comment, and I'm guessing that we have someone who wants to speak since she stayed here till the end.
And that was Mr. Celentano? Okay.
Tony's spoken with him several times.
I don't think there's anyone else any other comments from you? No? All right. So with that, we have concluded our robust agenda for tonight. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. That was great.
And stay, yes.